Hello, I'm Joshua Kline,
I'm Freddy Najera.
and together we did our recreation project on the Christmas tree Tract utility bridge.
So our stakeholder was Mr. Grant Rents, ABAC School Force Manager, and most of our communication was actually in person, but we did communicate a handful of times through email and through his phone so that we could coordinate work days and also some equipment and materials that we'd be using on a particular work day. Now, on work days, we'd actually end up meeting with him in person to discuss what exactly we'd gotten done that day and what we hope to get accomplished on subsequent work days and just plan a little bit ahead so that we can figure out our scheduling in terms of equipment and our availability just to make sure that we had access to the school forest. Now, in our initial meetings with Mr. Runts, we met with him to discuss what exactly he wanted us to do on this project, and really what he wanted was a traversable structure that sort of bridged the crossing between Willis Sill Stand and the pork chop stand of the Christmas tree tract of the actual forest. And really, he wanted this structure to facilitate the travel of UTVs. So he needed the structure to support the weight of UTVs and any equipment they might be loaded with. Moving on into some more defined purposes that he wanted from this bridge. Of course, he wanted it to support the weight of UTVs. He also was looking to create a sort of new access point in the ABAC School Forest on this small going over this stream between the Willis Sand and the chop sand of the Christmas tree of the school forest. And he also wanted to sort of shorten the length it would take, for example, for someone to get from the Big Hill tract into the Christmas tree tract, for example, into the pork chop stand. Creating this bridge would sort of shorten the distance one would need to travel. Otherwise, one might need to go down Willis Sill Road and then onto Adams Road to find an access point and get into the sand. Uh, he also, a smaller sort of sub objective was to create a better crossing for foot traffic since this stream crossing has a little bit up of elevation on the bank, and in order for somebody to cross it, they would either have to jump over the stream or they might have to just get into the stream itself. Um, and it's just creating a bridge that would just provide a safer form of travel. It also sort of provides a nice escape route, for example, prescribed burning, or just eases the access you can get to from one side of the stream to the other. And it can also serve as an identifiable landmark within the Christmas tree tract, since it'd be the only bridge in that southern portion of the Christmas tree tract, and be easily identifiable and a nice gathering point. Moving on into some of the supplies and the tools that we used, most of the supplies actually was provided by Mr. Rents. It was material that was already around in the school for us, but we did have to buy some additional materials later on in the course of the project. I'm told they were some poles, some fence posts, some deck boards, some fasteners, so screws and bolts, and we also needed some gravel, some riprap, some landscape paper, and concrete footers. Now, in terms of tools, most of the tools that we had and that we used were hand tools, and but we did use a UTV to move equipment down to the site a handful of times, and most of our hand tools were road hoes, shovels, a chainsaw, a circular saw, measuring tape, and some impacts.
So, just a brief overview of our construction process, we split it up into 6 sections. So, the first of which, as with any project, was the planning phase. This included an in-person interview with Grant Rents about the objectives and ideas he had for the structure itself. Um, we also went out to the designated build site. We did a layout of where we wanted the general bridge to be. We ran tape measures to see if all of our materials would fit, and also if we had long enough poles. Moving on to material gathering. Luckily, we had most of our materials already on hand at the school forest, so that really greatly reduced our time spent shopping for materials at Lowe's. We did have to buy a couple pieces of material, which we did later on in the project when we needed them for construction. So our first actual hands-on part of the project was the site prep. We went down to the building area and wanted to make sure it's clean, aesthetically pleasing, but also a safe working area. And you'll see that in the next slide. Later on, we did construction. Construction began with building a foundation. It involved bank stabilization, constructing the framework of the bridge, and then decking. Finishing touches includes applying riprap and gravel to the outside of the bridge area for help the buggy get on top of the bridge. Since it is raised off the ground, we wanted to build a ramp to make easier transitions. And finally, we had cleanup. So we wanted to leave the build site in better condition than we had arrived. So we went ahead and cleaned up any garbage, any leftover building materials, and just anything unsightly that wasn't either a part of the forest or a part of the bridge. So the first hands-on portion was site prep. So we began site prep by removing any vegetation from our working area. So in the picture on the right, you can see there's some grass and weeds growing up on just beside the bank. We were going to be working in that area and digging holes there, so we wanted just to get that out of the way so it wouldn't be brushing up against our arms or anything. So we went ahead and pulled all the grass, weeds, leaf litter out of the way. We also went on to remove any coarse woody debris. In the bottom of the left-hand picture, you can see that there's some accumulated broken branches, sticks, and some logs laying there. We went ahead and removed those so we have like a clean working area and reduce any stumbling or tripping that might occur. We also leveled the stream banks. As you can see in the right picture, there's a skidded excavator that had gone through this area prior to our arrival, and it created these ruts on the side of the bank. So what we did was we removed material from the mound in the middle and redistributed it into those ruts to fill it in and make a more gradual bank angle in order to help place our gravel and riprap. Finally, we also had to remove two large stumps of root mass on each side of the creek. On each side of the creek, there was about a 4 to 5 inch stump and a root ball attached to it, which we had to dig out by hand as they were perfectly placed right where our foundation logs were going to be going. So we had to remove that and get it out of the way. Onwards to construction. In the picture on the right, you can see our foundation layout. We dug a hole about 14 inches deep, laid in our foundation log, which was a treated fence post, and surrounded it with gravel and landscape paper. So the reason for the gravel was that we wanted it to have good, not filtration, but drainage in order to ensure that it wouldn't rot or shift throughout the soil as well. Moving on to bank stabilization, you can see in the picture on the left that we have gravel and riprap placed down all the way down to the water's edge. This was because a lot of our foot traffic and digging, as well as just placing material, had disrupted the soil, as well as the lack of vegetation to hold it in place. We wanted to make sure that there wouldn't be any sedimentation into the waterway. You can also see the framework and our two foundations, one on each side of the creek, where we have our poles stretched across the waterway with a center post for additional support. Decking was something that we added later to these pictures, which you'll see on the next slide.
The final product was a very simple bridge, and it took around 18 hours worth of work over the course of 6 non-consecutive work days. In total, we've estimated the cost of the materials to be around $1,672, only around $345 of which was purchased material. The rest of it, which was around $1,327, was previously owned material provided by our stakeholder, and that purchased material again was our decking and our deck screws and our lag bolts that we use to attach our foundation and our support poles to our framework. Now, we did encounter a few struggles, but we had to work around them, and that wasn't too much of an issue. But something worth mentioning is weather. Weather did in fact come into play, but it was very minor, and really only affected our schedule in terms of work days, what days we could work. For example, we couldn't really work on a very rainy day. Um, One much larger issue, though, was the unavailability of skid steer during the entire time of our construction period. The skid steer, ABAC School Force skid steer, was down because of mechanical issues, so we couldn't really use it or request to use it for example, moving materials down to our construction site. So we had to move all of our material by hand. Um, for example, we had to move our poles down onto the site by hand. That was a very time-consuming process. Now, another time-consuming process was actually the presence of these large root masses that we found on either side of the bank, near or around where we were planning to dig our trenches for our foundation poles. Uh, these consumed quite a bit of time. They took around 6 hours in total, and to remove these root masses and finish leveling out our site and digging our trenches so that we could finally exit the site preparation stage and begin work on our foundation.
So one of the benefits of this project, and my personal favorite, is the reduction in trip distance between tracks. So if you look to the map, you can see the red plus indicates the bridge. And during construction, in order to get from the bridge site to the Big Hill tract, we had to travel that orange road, which totaled about 2.25 miles. It was 2.2 miles to be exact. And not only was that a long distance to travel on the UTV with materials, but it also took you onto public roads with traffic as well. So if you look to the blue line, that is the new shortcut that is available because of the bridge. It reduces the trip from 2.25 miles to a 10th mile in order to get from the pork chop stand to the Big Hill tract. So it greatly reduced trip distance as well as made it safer by reducing the exposure to public roads. It also is an additional point of access to the stand. So instead of using the main entrance and going all the way through the main majority of the Christmas tree tract, to get to the interior, you can now enter the stand from Willis Still Road and gain access to the interior to stand from there. So future improvements that we would like to do, although we are very satisfied with the bridge as well as our stakeholder is satisfied as well, we would like to improve it in a couple of ways. The main reason, or the main thing that we would like to change is that we used 1-inch decking on the top surface, and we would prefer to have used 2-inch decking just to have a little more stiffness in the walkway and a little more structural integrity. We would also like to add some bracing to the center supports. Although they are firmly attached to the framework with a lag bolt going through the power pole into the center support, it's also notched into a concrete footer in the waterway. We do believe that adding some bracing would greatly improve the stiffness of those pieces. But overall, we're very satisfied with the way our project turned out, and we know our stakeholder Grant Rent is satisfied with the product as well. Anything?